Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Bonjour tout le monde. I want to begin by acknowledging that we're all gathered on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe and Algonquin peoples. I'd like to begin by thanking my Parliamentary Secretary, Anita Vandenbelt, for being here and for her hard work to get us to today. And of course, members of Parliament Faisal Al-Khouri and Lina Metlej Diab for being here today. Minister Jolie, thank you for joining me. Minister Randy Boissano, members of Parliament Shafkat Ali, PS Annie Koutrakis, Ron McKinnon, MP Salma Zahid, Minister Steve McKinnon, MP Leah Taylor-Roy, Minister Virani, PS Yasser Naqvi, Samir Zubairi, David McGinty, PS Bendayan, and PS Ikra Khalid. Thank you all for being here today. Alongside our members of Parliament and ministers are our incredible humanitarian partners, the Canadian Red Cross, CEO Conrad Sauvé, thank you for being here, and Humanitarian Coalition Executive Director Richard Morgan, and several representatives of the Humanitarian Coalition, including Michael Messenger of World Vision Canada, Lauren Ravon, Oxfam Canada, Beatrice Vagrant, Oxfam Quebec, Andy Harrington, Canadian Food Grains Bank, Lindsay Glasgow, Plan International Canada. Regarding the conflict between Hezbollah and Israel, we've seen that civilians have been killed, wounded, and/or displaced. It is heartbreaking and unacceptable. Comme vous tous, nous sommes profondément préoccupés par l'impact de l'escalade du conflit entre le Hezbollah et Israël. Tens of thousands of Israelis have been displaced from their homes in northern Israel. They have not been able to go back home for over a year. Over 2,000 people in Lebanon have been killed, including 2 Canadians. Thousands of civilians have been wounded, including children. It is estimated that 1.2 million people in Lebanon have been now displaced. Shelters are over capacity, hospitals are having to shut down, and there's a very high risk of disease outbreaks. This conflict is taking a terrible toll on civilians in Lebanon and beyond. And people in Lebanon were already dealing with a prolonged political, economic, and humanitarian crisis even before this new crisis. For humanitarian organizations on the ground, including some who are represented here today, the conflict has put additional strains on their systems of distributing humanitarian aid and even operating within the country. So the suffering must end. We must return to the path of lasting peace and security for Israelis, Lebanese, and Palestinian civilians, and many others across the region. Hundreds of thousands of people now need urgent support, and Canada, as in the past, is responding and will respond. As of today, Canada has committed $25 million to support a humanitarian response to assist the most vulnerable civilians in Lebanon. À ce jour, le Canada s'est engagé à verser 25 millions de dollars de l'aide humanitaire pour répondre aux besoins émergents au Liban. This includes $15 million in new funding that I'm announcing today that will help experienced and trusted humanitarian organizations on the ground respond to the needs of civilians in Lebanon and scale up their response to provide even more support to people who are in urgent need of that support. This will go towards food, water, emergency health services, and protection services to families that are most affected and in urgent need today in Lebanon. I'd like to really take a moment to acknowledge the incredible bravery and hard work and courage of the humanitarian and healthcare workers in Lebanon, in Israel, in Gaza, who are facing dangers and risking their own safety to deliver much-needed humanitarian support to those who need it the most. The second half of today's announcement outlines details of the $10 million in humanitarian aid that we in the Government of Canada announced on September the 28th. I'm now pleased to share more details on how that initial $10 million is going to be allocated. $4 million of that will go to the United Nations High Commission for Refugees and the World Food Programme, on the ground to deliver much-needed support to Lebanese civilians. And up to $6 million will be set aside to match donations made by individual Canadians to the Canadian Red Cross and the Humanitarian Coalition, and that is to respond to the appeals for Lebanon. Donations will be matched by the Government of Canada between September 24th and November 3rd, up to $3 million for each appeal. $3 million in matching for the Canadian Red Cross donations, and $3 million in matching to any donations made by Canadians in this time period to the Humanitarian Coalition. I'd like to take a moment to thank those Canadians who have already donated to this cause, this humanitarian response, and thank in advance those who will respond to this appeal. And a big thank you to the Humanitarian Coalition and the Canadian Red Cross, who are facilitating these two appeals and enabling us to maximize our efforts to deliver this aid to the most needy. Many Canadians, including so many who are here and those watching at home, have deep ties to Lebanon and care about what's happening there. You have parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and members of the immediate family who are very much worried about their safety and the security of their loved ones. Let me assure you that Canada has and will continue to stand with you. We stand with all peoples affected by this crisis, including displaced Lebanese civilians, refugees, migrants, and other vulnerable populations. We also stand with the citizens of Israel who have not been able to go back home to their homes in northern Israel because of the rocket attacks by the terrorist group Hezbollah. I want to reiterate and echo the calls made by Minister Joly in the past that Canadians in Lebanon should leave now with all the available commercial means of transport. We continue to call for a 21-day ceasefire across the Lebanese-Israel border to give diplomacy a chance so that we can implement United Nations Security Council Resolution 1701. And we reiterate the call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza so that we can implement United Nations Security Council Resolution 2735. Civilians on both sides of the Israeli-Lebanese border should be allowed to safely return home and live their lives and live in their homes. And the current conflict is preventing that. Canada believes strongly that everyone has the right to live in peace, security, and dignity. Thank you, and I'll now take any questions you may have.
Can you talk to the scale of the need that exists there right now? I know that Canada is giving this amount of money, but I mean, that's obviously a much smaller part than the overall need. So talk about what is needed in Lebanon right now in terms of overall aid.
What's needed is urgently is food, medicine, and shelter materials, and emergency health care and protection services. We're talking about millions of people who've been displaced by the conflict, and we're responding to the Lebanon appeal, the global Lebanon appeal made by the United Nations, and I believe this amount of a total of $25 million will get us to our share of that appeal that Canada traditionally meets, if not exceed that share.
How do you ensure that this goes to the people that need it and doesn't end up in the hands of Hezbollah?
World Food Program, we trust them. United Nations High Commission for Refugees, we trust them. Canadian Red Cross, who are on the ground, we trust them. The members of the Humanitarian Coalition. These are international trusted partners who have decades of experience navigating conflict zones, delivering humanitarian aid, and doing so in the context of having accountability and integrity measures that have kept our confidence high over the years. I trust they'll do the same this time.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Merci. Merci, Mélanie.